Hi, this is Travis again today with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the glutes, particularly one in the back, the big one on the outside called the glute max. I know that's a muscle that doesn't need a lot of introduction, gets a lot of attention in the media. It tends to be the muscle that's always in season. Certainly looks nice when it's well developed, and I think that's a big part of it. Even functionally though, it's definitely a very functional muscle anytime we're extending our hip like this. And so you tend to see them pretty well developed in, say, sprinters and football players, power lifters and that type of thing, sometimes as well. And so it's a big force generation muscle when it comes to extending our hip. And so there's a cool a couple cool accessory exercises I'm going to talk about today using the bands. And I say accessory because they don't tend to be the bread and butter exercises that are generally used to get after the glutes. Those tend to be, more of your squat, deadlift, lunge, and even step up variations, as well as hip thrust, which is an exercise that's gotten pretty popular in about the last 10 years. And so the first one I'm going to show is a way to sort of simulate that hip thrust maneuver. And for those of you who don't know what a hip thrust is, it's essentially a bridge. And so if you were to do just the good old-fashioned, garden variety bridge, people put a barbell across their lap, or there are harnesses now with weight machines that kind of simulate that. And that's, a hip thrust where you add a lot of load into the mixture. And, people are doing it with barbells and things. I'm sure you can see a lot of videos on YouTube where they use a tremendous amount of weight. And they can do that because this is a very powerful muscle, and it has a lot of leverage when it's in that bridge position. Now, obviously, if you're not there yet, just doing some good old-fashioned bridges can be fine, depending on where you fall in that strength continuum. But if you do have some of these bands, this is going to be a cool way to make that exercise sort of simulated when you don't have a lot of equipment laying around. And so I'm going to use a little bit thicker band today, and that's because, again, these muscles can take quite a bit of punishment. The nice thing about the thicker bands too is they don't tend to dig into you as much. But if you're not there yet strength-wise and you need a thinner one, obviously that's totally fine to slice accordingly. But maybe you just want to put a towel or some extra fabric material in here to sort of cushion that up for you, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this band, I'm going to go into a kneeling position, and I'm going to want this band to be kind of low across my lap like this. This is where I can take a fair amount of pressure here. And you'll notice as I'm grabbing it, there are kind of two loops that are made on each end. And so what you want to do is take one of those loops and hook it around your foot, okay? Now, obviously, if you have some knee issues, it might be kind of hard to sit back on your heels like this, or you're just really inflexible in your quads, but if you can, it tends to be a lot easier to get in position when you're sitting back on your heels. And then you're going to have to this is going to be a little bit of heaving and hoeing, but you're going to have to kind of pull this around, but kind of get that loop pre-made so you're ready to throw your foot in there, and just kind of, have to muscle it over a little bit. So you're going to pull this thing over, and again, it might take a little bit of practice to get good enough to do this quickly, but I encourage you to stay with it because this is a pretty cool exercise here, okay? Once it feels pretty good and secured across your feet and pelvis, then you're ready to rock and roll. So I've got this thing kind of loose, tight across the pelvis here. And so two cool things are going to happen now. As I extend my hips and try to go up into a kneeling position, this band is fighting to keep me on the ground. And so I'm going to really get a lot of load onto those glute muscles as I extend my hips up. The other cool thing that happens is if I don't push my feet hard into the mat by using my quads, my feet are going to come off the mat with me. So by holding my feet down, I'm actually also engaging my quadriceps quite a bit. So this one does a nice job getting the muscles on both sides of the fence. And so if you want to just throw your hands on your hips, get them out of the way, and then extend. Okay, that's a pretty nice way to get after those muscles. If you want to put your hands down and give yourself a little stability, you can certainly do that too. Okay. If you happen to have some yoga blocks or something like that laying around, maybe some big books, you can even just keep your hands stabilized against something like that and then just kind of extend. Okay? And then last one, of course, the famous foam roller. Just kind of wedge that in here and then extend. Okay? And so those are a couple of cool variations to throw at these muscles. Definitely is going to get those glutes working. If you're not extremely strong in your quad department either, you're definitely going to probably feel some burn there. And so try that one out. Easy way to get out of this thing is just kind of pull it up around your shins a little bit first, and then you can just kind of pull it down, and then you're liberated, okay? So that's the first variation. So that's kind of a kneeling hip thrust. After that, we can go more into a conventional bridge. And so again, simplest way to do the bridge is just, sort of lay back, and then with your feet planted, lift up your hips, okay? In yoga, you'll see them arch their back a lot. You don't really have to do that, just to where you're sort of straight. If you arch your back a lot, for some of you that may not feel wonderful. It also doesn't really do a better job recruiting your glutes per se, so it's not that necessary. So just, lift your hips up off the mat. Main thing is you just want to feel a good contraction in your glutes, okay? For many of you though, that's going to get easy after a while. It still can be a nice way to warm yourself up, but eventually you're going to be able to do a lot of them and it won't be that challenging. So some simple ways to make that harder: throw a band in the mixture. So this is the smaller loop band by Perform Better. You can usually get, I'll put the link, as usual at the bottom, like 4 colors for around $20. The black one tends to be a little bit stronger, but for many of you that are pretty strong, even this one may not be enough. So you can always double them up too. So add 2 bands into the mixture, or 2 black ones, whatever colors you can muster. Just want to throw these around your feet and ankles, okay? Keep it flat as best you can, because when it rolls up, it just kind of digs into you more. So again, I could have doubled these up so I had both on me, but I'm just going to use one just for now. Pull this guy on top of your knees. And so what the band is trying to do is bring your legs together, okay? And so by not allowing that to happen, I'm doing a function called hip abduction, and that allows me to work on another muscle called your gluteus medius. I'm going to do a whole nother video just on that muscle because it deserves its own plug. It's also a very important muscle. But for now, we're talking about glute max, so this is just a nice 2-for-1. And so I'm going to get the glute max when I extend my hip, and I get that glute med when I push my legs out or keep them there. And so this is going to be a way to make a conventional bridge a little bit hard. So just keep those legs dialed in, and up you go. Or if you wanted, put your feet together and kind of open as you lift, okay? And they tend to call that more frog bridging, and that's a way you can make a conventional bridge a little bit more difficult, okay? And then the second easiest way is to just elevate your feet some, okay? So I can get these yoga blocks again if you happen to have some of those laying around. You don't necessarily need to get these though if you don't have them. You can also just use, stack up some books or whatever you have that's pretty solid. Push your feet up on a couch if you really want to challenge yourself a little bit more. And then just get back in that bridge position with your feet up. And then what's going to happen now is the distance I'm traveling is greater. And so it's going to put a little bit more demand on those glutes than if I had my feet back down on the floor, okay? And when I marry this together, with this band, then that definitely makes it even harder. If you're still feeling like that, doing all this stuff is not challenging enough, then the third option would be maybe just add some load on your waist. And so if you happen to have a backpack, if you have a weight vest or a backpack, put whatever you have laying around that's heavy in the backpack, put that in your lap, okay? And so I could be holding a bag here and then doing a bridge. And that's a way to also put a pretty good demand on the glute muscles if you, need all that tension. Some of you obviously aren't going to be there, but at least that way you have some room to grow a little bit and, some different progressions as you're getting a little stronger, okay? But if you throw all that at your glutes, you definitely should feel them, starting to get cooking. Let me throw the third exercise at you so you at least see one more variation. And what you're going to do for that one is you're going to be on all fours. So hands and knees, which they also call a tabletop or quadruped. A lot of people do this one with their knees kind of close together, but try to keep them apart, close to the width of your hands. Just puts a better demand on the core muscles. When a lot of people lift their leg, they tend to arch their back a lot. So just keep that back kind of flat as best you can in what we call like a neutral position. Core braced, and there we go. Now I've got it kind of dialed in. I didn't adjust it after I did that last exercise, so it kind of moved on me. Doing it with your leg bent can be a little bit easier to hold it in place generally. You can do this with your legs straight too. I just find that sometimes when I do it that way, the band has a greater tendency to want to ride up even more. But if you can make it work for you with your legs straight, then that's a great variation also. And so that's a really nice way to incorporate some core muscles, arms and shoulders, as well as getting after some of that, hip extension function in the glute max, okay? So try some of those out. I definitely hope that they help. Feel free to comment at the bottom as usual, and I will put all the links to these products, at the bottom. as I usually do. And I'm gonna have one small encore for those of you who wanna hang around. There's one last exercise that I'm gonna combine two concepts. So for my last video, some of you may remember, we did some chest pressing, and I even mentioned you can put these fat grips and hook it to one of these, so you can watch one of those other videos if you wanna see how to do that. I'm just gonna show the band right now just to make this a little bit quicker. But what you can do is you can combine like a static bridge with the chest press. And so if you are familiar with that chest press exercise, you just take this thing around the back of you, and then this is how we did a chest press on the other video. Now if you just get yourself into a bridge position, and you can hold it, then you can do the chest press like that. And so the cool thing about doing that exercise variation is that you're killing two birds with one stone. So if you like the way that feels, feel free to try it out, and if you like it, then more power to you, keep it going. If you're sort of more wanting to just kind of work on one thing at a time, then slice accordingly. But in any event, try this stuff out, and I hope you have some fun.